There we go. It's working. Ooh, no lag? Oh, I like YouTube. Alright, I gotta get the link. Man, it's acting up today. Get. There we go. Alright, cool. Cool. Oh, look, you're here already. I didn't even. I'm still pushing it out on social media. Boom. Really, I'm 11 things over to make the tweet. Let's get that. I was gonna make a Kamen Rider Blade reference because you said you're sitting on a park bench, but we don't need to be that sad right now. Boom, that's out. I hate. I'm trying to set up all like my tabs for when I talk about actual news stuff, and for some odd reason, Google Chrome's doing that bullshit where the second I freaking close out of a tab, like change between tabs, has to reload the whole thing, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Also, the good thing about streaming on YouTube is right after this, it's already on YouTube as a freaking video because I already did the description. I did the thumbnail already, so I don't have to do anything after that. I'll probably cut out the whole beginning right here though, but that's easy to do in YouTube. Why won't it? Just trying to modify this really quick. I don't know why it's acting up. Oh, there you go. All right, let's see. Go into details and edit. There we go. Oh, I can schedule lives ahead of time too. That's actually pretty neat. All right, save, done. Let's get that ready. And we'll get the intro going because you gotta have the intro going. Mm. I'm surprised you're not gonna use all your data. Like, you're gonna run out of data like 10 minutes. You're gonna be like, oh yeah, no, I'm just watching. Then all of a sudden you're gonna get the alert. It's like, sorry, you're out of data on your phone. Unless you go to a Starbucks and give them your money to the corporate machine to use their Wi-Fi. So I can see. Let's go into the first thing. It's February 8th to be exact. And the top 50 comics of January was released. And I am not even remotely close to surprised. We're actually going to switch over and take a look at this because there's a lot of comics that honestly just disappeared because no one cared anymore. And there's a trend of what the substance of the story of those comics are. And we're going to switch over. Boom. There we go. Actually, let's see. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Bigger. There we go. Top 50 comics. Obviously, Spawn, once again, dominating comic sales. This time was Scorch #1. Nice. Obviously, I've been saying it since, Spawn, was it 300 dropped, and then they did King Spawn, everything else. Spawn has been dominating comics constantly. Obviously, it's good writing. It's once again one of those things where it's like, hey, you can write a good story. Oh, why did I do that? Come on, Streamlabs, don't do this to me, Streamlabs. Be polite. There we go. It's once again, good writing will always, work for you. That's why Spawn has been such a dominating comic for the last 2 years. I mean, Spawn dethroned manga at one point when manga was just shitting on everybody. And I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm not surprised She-Hulk #1 was the second biggest selling comic. The fact that Spawn though was #1 and it was like a $5.99 issue, like $6 issues, those I'm very, very wary when I have to spend anything over $4.99 for a comic, because standard price is usually $3.99, but having a $4.99 comic, I was like, oh, that's not bad. That's so for Spawn Scorch #1 to be top in January. Now, I will say this is just strictly comic books. This does not factor in graphics novels, which manga is now considered graphic novels. It's under that category now. And also, I'll get into it as well. From a sales standpoint, they took My Hero Academia out of the superhero category, and just put it in the regular graphic novels for young adults and stuff like that. So that's going to modify a lot of the data for other statistics I'm going to be looking at, which is going to go over manga graphic novel sales in the boom last year, because now that all the data is out, you have the facts now of the sales in the comic book industry. It's something I've talked about on my podcast loosely. I've only talked about my personal opinions and reasonings why I'm not getting certain the publishers. I'm not going in on a lot of Marvel and DC now. There's a few I'm getting from each publisher. That's it. It has nothing to do with the whole woke and tokenization or anything like that. Just from a writing quality standpoint, it's not there. There are certain writers I will always, check out their books for, like Hickman, Donny Cates, which I'm going to be talking about really soon, because Donny Cates, one of his newer runs, is in the top 5 right now, which is rightfully deserved because Hulk is dominating, right? Like, Hulk is such a good comic, and this 6 arc Mad Scientist relaunch of the Hulk is really good. So yeah, let's talk about Hulk #3 was #5. Donny Cates' Hulk, on a whim at my comic book store back in November. The issue came out right before Thanksgiving, and my comic book shop, my local shop, because I always support small businesses, and they were like, hey, oh, my internet's being really wonky right now. There we go. They were like, hey, we have this #1 for a new Hulk. We know you like Donny Cates, and we put it in with your pull list, because I have a pull list. I have subscriptions I go through. I have a whole form I fill out with what comics I want. Then when I change my mind, I'll get them removed. But sometimes there's certain ones where they know my taste in comics that they'll, be like, hey, we put this in there, in case you want to check it out. And I was like, I'm having Immortal Hulk wasn't bad. Weapon H wasn't bad. I did enjoy those comics. They were good, but I just didn't, they kind of fizzled out for me, and I went into what's called trade waiting, which is where instead of buying the comic books as they're coming out, I'm waiting for the trade paperbacks to come out, or the graphic novel, so to speak. So I've been trade waiting on a lot of stuff. And same with like Venom, because they just started Venom back over with a #1 after Venom Island and all this other stuff, which was really good. Venom Island, it was very intriguing. I'm kind of burnt out from a Marvel standpoint on the symbiotes, or symbiotes as they mispronounced it in Venom. And so I was just like, I'm gonna hold off on a lot of Venom stuff, trade wait for that. Venom #4 is, oddly enough, ironically, #4 of the sales for January. And we have Batman 119. So in the top 5, one DC comic. If you look at the top 10, still one DC comic. There isn't like DC, like we have Dark Knights of Steel, but even like Ben Reilly Spider-Man #1 wasn't rounded out the top 20, and Detective Comics was in 21. Like there's not a lot of DC in the top 30, and DC has been, and when it is, it's like Detective Comics, it's Batman. There's no, like, I don't see, Nightwing, which is Batman adjacent, Batman and Robin 3 of 3. Like there's no, like, Superman Son of Kal-El #6 was 42. They just made it in the top like 50. And I know a lot of people are very passionate about their opinion of Superman Son of Kal-El, which I'm going to get into, because I actually I am a fan of Superman. I do read Action Comics. As post New 52s going into the Rebirth, I kind of fell out with Superman stuff, because in that time frame, especially after Brightest Day and Blackest Night, or well, reverse that, Blackest Night, Brightest Day, and then they went into the New 52s. I was more curious about everything going on with Green Lantern, them bringing back Arthur Curry as Aquaman back alive, and the Flash post, in Brightest Day, like those comics, I was really curious what was going to go on with those. So those are the ones I was really heavily focused on, plus the Justice League as well, because leading into the New 52 run, it got into the whole thing where like they were trying to figure out who was going to lead the Justice League, and there's still that one comic when it was freaking Arthur Curry Aquaman just bodying Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Like, and yes, he used water and this and that to his advantage, but I don't care. That still counts. He handled business. That's all that mattered. And so, post New 52s, like they were good at first, and then when the New 52s was done, they got a few things here and there, and then it was like, oh, here's Rebirth, and I'm like, really? Like, come on now. I'm just trying to read comics. I'm trying to enjoy, like, and I'm just tired of all these reboots and like changes. And I was like, comic books have been around for a really long time. I get it. I've been collecting for 30 years. I'm turning 36 this month. I've talked about, what got me into comics. Like my mom going out and let me get my first comic book. My mom even collected comics when she was a kid. And, I've been reading comics for a really long time. So it is that level of, well, originality. Where we going to get something new? And you can't tell me that there's no originality anymore. You're telling me that everything that has been done can be done. We can't get something new. And that's kind of my issue with DC and Marvel. Whereas, a lot of indie publishers are actually doing new things with their comics. They're inventing new characters. They're inventing new worlds and new universes, which is why in a bit I'm going to get into Young Ripper, Eric July, and his Ripperverse and what he made a tweet about. Because, I've been getting flack from mutuals and people that I'm friends with because of my comic book opinions and who I'm retweeting and liking tweets for and pushing out like support of. And I'm like, well, just cause like I support a lot of indie comic books, and most of my comics now are like, I get Boom Studios, which are they really indie anymore? I'm not sure because of their sales and how well they're doing. That was weird. And, IDW, like Dark Horse, like there's, Eternia Comics. I probably got their name wrong. And then, things like, Google Chrome's freaking reloading. Then you got like All Caps Comics. You got all these, independent studios that are like pumping out good comics. And I think it's one of those situations where even, going back over to the list of sales, it's like Thor. I'm shocked Thor is still in the top 10, just because of the backlash I've seen on social media about them giving Mjolnir a gender, making the hammer female. And that's another thing too I've talked about. And actually, I think that was in Thor 21. So I think these are some like second prints. I wish the list would tell you what was second print and what was actually like new released. So the Thor thing, I guess I'll talk about that very briefly with the whole Jane Foster Thor from Thor Love and Thunder. A lot of people are like, well, she was a character in the comics, so what's the point? Like, just because she was in the comic. I was like, there was a more overall arc to Jane Foster becoming Thor, and not just, hey, we have a female Thor. That wasn't done to appeal to, females or this and that. It was done with a story and a purpose, and a long-term purpose. I will say I didn't care about Thor for the longest time until what was it called? Original Sin. And that was when, Nick Fury whispered something in Thor's ear. All of a sudden, he became unworthy to carry Mjolnir, and he went on this whole quest to find himself. Jane Foster has cancer. She's dying. She now becomes Thor. It heals her, keeps her alive. And we get actually this whole quest of Thor finding himself along the way of Jane Foster being Thor. And it ultimately led to War of the Realms, which was a very good crossover event. Thor has never been one of my favorite comic book characters. I won't even pretend that I was like, oh my god, Thor, this is great. It's especially from a movie standpoint. When Thor was announced, I'm like, of course I'm gonna do Thor. They're doing the Avengers. I'm not even shocked when the hammer Easter egg was at the end of Iron Man 2, when Coulson went to New Mexico desert. And the thing about that was just to prove a point, like I'm not the biggest Thor fan. I will never pretend to be that I was like a Thor fan my whole life growing up. Growing up from a Marvel standpoint, I liked X-Men and Spider-Man. And then, from a DC standpoint, obviously Batman, Superman. I was a Green Lantern, even Aquaman when he was a comedy character and no one took him seriously. He was the butt of all the jokes and no one would take an Aquaman fan seriously. I was a fan of Aquaman. I have my Aquaman shoes that I got because they have the was it the Converse like DC run? So I have the Aquamans, I have some Jokers, I have a Batman Detective Comics set, and then they had some Marvel ones too. So I got like the low top Hulks, because I was actually a Hulk fan. I like Hulk. But so with the Thor Love and Thunder, everyone's like, oh, this is Disney and Marvel being woke. But I was like, I'm holding my tongue, but I'm not gonna hold my breath, because if I don't think we're ever gonna get War of the Realms as a full-fledged like movie, but there are ways it could be adapted, and we could get a legit like Thor, finding himself, losing that power, and then ultimately regaining it and becoming the All-Father like he did post War of the Realms, like the end of the War of the Realms, and then that led into the new Thor run that Donny Cates was writing, which was really good. I'm sad I do believe he is departing as writer from Thor. And that whole run was good. He became a Herald of Galactus. There was just a lot going on, and it kind of was something new and refreshing for Thor, but it wasn't just regular Thor with new things happening. Now that he's All-Father, it's a whole new avenue for him for story. And I was like, I like that. I like that a lot. But that was, also it was a good run. Like, I didn't hate it, but Thor Love and Thunder, from the Jane Foster standpoint, I'm like, a lot of people like to bring up all these things like, hey, it's Jane Foster. This is just woke propaganda. And I was like, listen, on the surface value, I could see that. But until the movie comes out, is if they have the underlying arc of Thor, becoming the All Father eventually, this and that. I was like, because that would be good to see. I'm everyone loves Thor Ragnarok. It was an entertaining movie, but the Thor movies themselves, like Dark World, I enjoyed. I did. I know a lot of people didn't. The first Thor, I didn't think it was bad, but I think they just aren't the best writing, aren't the best directing. Thor, like you try to make a top tier AAA superhero out of someone who isn't. It worked for Iron Man. I will say lightning in a bottle. Like the first Iron Man film, that brought Iron Man to the forefront. And I've noticed with the comics, a lot of the comics now are adapting the MCU stuff, and whether it's character design based off the actors or kind of retelling some of the stuff from the movies or retconning things. And that's why also from a movie standpoint, comic book movies, I'm burnt out. I've been adamant in saying it. Once Endgame came out, it was done. I was like, okay, this was a decade of my life, 22 films. I'm good. Like, this was a good door to be closed. Like, you did it. Good job. Like, and now it's just like, well, we have our Fox properties back. And it's like, oh, great. We're going to get X-Men rebooted and we're going to get all these other ones. And I'm like, I don't really care. Like, just comic book movies just aren't, like, I'm still going to watch them because, my lady likes comic book movies. But I'm not going to lose my shit for comic book movies. Now, if Sony's like, hey, we're going to make an Amazing Spider-Man 3 with Andrew Garfield, I'll go see that. We're going to give you a Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire. I'll be like, all right, I'll go see that. I still am adamant that No Way Home was not nostalgia bait. It was actually a really good film. If you haven't, I had my friend Chris on the Under Day Mark podcast, and we talked about it. Like, that was an editing nightmare because that video was like almost 3 hours long. I had to cut out so much stuff because then we went on a tangent of everything wrong with the DC extended universe, everything else, which is a whole nother cup of tea I'm not talking about today. That's not happening. But before we go over to the next topic, I want to say I'm curious. There's a lot of Spider-Man and X-Men in here. Obviously, I'm not pulling X-Men anymore. Honestly, after House and Powers of X and like some of Hickman's run, it was good. But I didn't like that I had to read things like New Mutants, Marauders, X of Sword, all that stuff was coming out. And I was like, bro, can I just read one comic and get a story? I'm tired of all these crossovers and tie-ins and multiple issues. Like, just give me one comic that runs. If it's all in the same universe, that's fine. But I don't want to have to go out of my way to read all this other stuff for characters I don't care about. Post House and Powers of X, New Mutants, Marauders, those did not appeal to me. I read like one or two of the first issues. I was like, oh, well, it's all tying into this whole new X-Men ecosystem we have. And I was like, it just didn't do anything for me. And even with like X Lives of Wolverine, never been a Wolverine fan. Even though I like the X-Men, just not. But yeah, a lot of Spider-Man. I'm curious about the Star Wars High Republic, Eye of the Storm, because that was in 34. Like, I haven't touched anything Star Wars. I watched The Mandalorian season 1. Have not watched Book of Boba Fett. Have not watched basically anything Star Wars. The last thing outside of movies that I watched was when they were doing I forgot the name of that show. It was one of the animated ones, but it wasn't Clone Wars. It was some other one. And I was like, it wasn't bad, but I'm just, it just didn't do anything for me. I just didn't really care for that. It just wasn't my cup of tea. Just didn't do anything. And I was like, I'll eventually get back into Star Wars stuff. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think once Disney got Lucasfilms, growing up, I was a big fan of like the extended universe books. When I played things like, was it Shadow of the Empire and the N64, and then they had the whole Rogue, the book of like with the Bounty Hunter series, and also stuff. Like I read a lot of those books, and I was like, oh, these are really cool. I was like, I wish these could be like a TV show or a movie. And then, Disney got Lucas Films, and instantly I was like, oh, well, they got money. Look what they did. Like they if we can get all these like Marvel shows and this that, we can get like look at all this extent. And then they're like, oh yeah, no, that stuff does not matter. And I was like, that was a lot of effort and work put into those books. And I've read a few of the books post Disney getting Star Wars, and I forgot the name of one of the books I read. It was like kind of like a prequel to Episode 7. It wasn't bad. I forgot what it was called though. It had a white like slip sleeve cover on it. I wish I knew. It's not on my bookshelf because I got that when I was back on the East Coast, and I had to pack lightly moving across the country. I was like, only the important things, which was all my most of my comics and trades and consoles and computer and whatnot, and clothes. But yeah, so Star Wars standpoint, I haven't watched anything Star Wars like, and the fandom is just, which I'm gonna get into in another segment once I'm done going over all the comic book stuff. But that's it for the comic book and manga sales and kind of my tangent on Thor, because there's a lot to the whole Thor thing, and until I see a trailer and until I see the movie, I'm not even gonna assume anything, because it's not like when you go off of posters and interviews and this and that, it's like, yeah, just because some of the stuff that's being talked about could make the cutting room floor. You never know. So I'm just not gonna hold my breath on it for now. And now we're gonna go over, because I want to talk about, let's change this really quick so we can see it. Let's shrink that down, because now I want to talk about Son of Kal-el, which I mentioned, because Son of Kal-el was 42nd in January. But this came out a couple weeks ago, and this is about the new December sales, and obviously it has been confirmed, but now that we saw January sales, it was 42nd, so this kind of ties in with some of the stuff with the whole Son of Kal-el. Now, like I said, I was a Superman fan, and with the Action Comics with Kal-El, Superman going off world, I was curious because I was like, oh, we're gonna get Jonathan Kent taking over Superman. This is intriguing. This is something new. We haven't really had someone legitimately take that mantle over, and so I was like, let me read up on it. So this is from Bounding into Comics, another site that I love to go to. They really cover just about anything you need to know or want to know in the comic book industry, and it's a site that I visit daily, which is why I want to do something like this video series, which I will be doing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every morning for about 90 minutes or so, and then I'm going to piece up everything into segments on the YouTube channel just to make it easier, so you don't have to scroll. Like, if there's a certain thing you want to watch, it's going to be in its own video instead of having to go through the whole entire stream. So the latest data set featuring comic book sales from December appears to show that readers are rejecting DC's woke changes to Superman. This is something I've talked about on my podcast. I get the narrative being told of the comics being woke, or in certain situations tokenization. Eric July is a YouTuber that I watch consistently, and Nerdrotic is also another YouTube channel that I go to and watch a lot of stuff like Friday Night Tights and all the individual stuff, and especially the Doctor Who videos are what really made me really enjoy that channel. I will say 99% of the time, I've said on my podcast, I agree with almost everything he says. I think outside of using the terminology of woke, there are far other issues. It's not just the woke narrative that's being interjected into comic books. It's also the fact that like the writing just isn't good. Even the comics that aren't woke, the writing is just lackluster, and everyone wants to just do these big crossovers, or they're writing for television, which is something Eric pointed out that I didn't even realize until I started looking at like the CW stuff and everything else, and I was like, this does make sense. Everyone's writing their comics for it to be brought to TV and film, not for people who want to read comics. And I talked to another friend of mine who doesn't even do social media, just a good friend of mine, known him since we were kids. He was telling me, he's like, when I was like, oh, you should read this, run this, and he's like, oh, I'll just wait, it'll probably be a TV show. And I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. Like, I, yeah, okay. So, so, let's see, we're not gonna, go over everything in there. Uh, First thing, they replaced Clark Kent with his son, Jonathan Kent, as Superman, and then made him attracted to dudes. That is in the book. And then it says, in October, DC Comics confirmed, just like his father before him, John Kent has fallen for a reporter. After initially striking up a friendship with reporter Jay Nakamura, he and John became romantically involved in the pages of Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 5, from writer Tom Taylor and artist Jim Timms. I believe Tom Taylor did Injustice, which is why, like, I was like, he did the Injustice comic, and I'm like, how, like, that was actually good. And I'm someone who I played Injustice 1 and 2, and I don't think I watched. Is the Injustice animated film even out? I don't even think I watched that. I'm behind on watching all the animated stuff. Plus, one of the things, if I read the comic, why do I want to watch an animated version? I already read the comics. And DC fandom I covered on the Loop Bros podcast with Daryl and everyone else. We sat down and we did a whole breakdown of DC fandom and the announcements. I will say, after the way the first DC fandom went, my expectations, the bar was set high. And then the last DC fandom they did, if you want to deflate any hype for anything DC related, that DC fandom did it properly. Because when I was done watching the DC fandom, I'm like, outside of Blue Beetle, I don't care about a majority of the stuff that was shown. And so, like, I like Blue Beetle, and I like a lot of the obscure DC characters. Booster Gold, Blue Beetle. Booster Gold, I mentioned on my most recent podcast about the rumor of Donald Faison playing him in Legends of Tomorrow. My opinion on that, just to reiterate, the short version of it is, like, I don't care. I stopped watching Legends of Tomorrow halfway through season 2, so it's not like they're going to lose me as a viewer or that I have any opinion of it, because I haven't watched the show, so I don't know anything that's going on in that show. So if it's something I'm not consuming and something I'm not reading or watching, then I'm not going to have a big opinion on it, So quickly following that, at DC Fandom, this is something. Jim Lee announced that Superman's iconic motto, truth, justice, and the American way, would be changed to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Lee explained that the change was to better reflect the global storylines that we are telling across DC and honor the characters' incredible legacy of over 80 years of building a better world. Okay, reasoning aside, yes, but global storylines? So I'm not reading enough DC. Are there any global storylines that are going on? Because I haven't. I mean, when I read Green Lantern, it's like, well, it's not global, they're all over the galaxy. And Aquaman, most of the time, it's water related. Like, so I have no idea. Then DC Comics writer Tom Taylor revealed that the new gay Superman, okay, we don't have to call gay, like, obviously I'm just gonna say Jonathan Kent or Superman or Son of Kal-El, because I mean, we don't need to keep throwing the adjective in there. I'm not trying to be woke or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, he's the new Superman. So he's a climate activist. Taylor shared the cover of Superman Son of Kal-El #7 that shows Kent holding up a sign that reads "School Strike for Climate." I don't get this. So obviously I stopped reading after like issue 3. The writing just wasn't good. This is before any of the actual, gay Superman with his friend reporter even happened. The art style was pretty good for some of the issues. The writing wasn't horrible, but just the story didn't appeal to me. And I've always been a firm believer. If a comic book story doesn't appeal to you, it could appeal to someone else. There is no one comic that's going to appeal to everybody. I mean, obviously Spawn has been appealing to a lot of people because it's been freaking dominating the sales constantly, but that's besides the point. Yeah, but there's no one comic that's everyone's gonna love. Everyone's gonna read it and be like, this is the greatest thing I've ever read. This is a story I want to keep reading. So like for me with like Green Lantern, when I stopped pulling Green Lantern because I was just tired of the writing, actually Teen Lantern kind of ruined it for me and everything else. I was like, okay, well, this is gonna appeal to someone. Same way when like I got into Aquaman, he was a joke. And I remember vividly going to comic book shops, picking up old like Aquaman comics, and people being like, you should get some Batman, or some Wolverine and some Hulk and this and that. I'm like, I really want to read Aquaman. They're like, he's a joke. It's like, well, I'm entertained, like I'm enjoying Aquaman. Like, should I not enjoy a comic book? Isn't that what comic books are for? To like enjoy. Like, I was like, I'm like 10. Why do these grown ass dudes that just hang out at comic book shops all day being like, hey, you shouldn't? So I'm not going to be that person. Just saying, I'm not going to be a deterrent to someone wanting to buy a comic book. So if this appeals to you, good. Like, I'm glad you found a comic that you can read and enjoy. I would not get too emotionally attached to it because this is a industry where money wants to be made, and if the sales continue to go down, comic book companies have no issues, no pun intended, on just canceling a comic. They will runs have been canceled so many times for low sales, and it's one of those things where it's like, if you're trying to cater to social media, then yeah, like here's Tom Taylor's tweet about the Superman, this and that. Let's see. Can I click on it and go over? I can't. Damn. All right. Well, I don't want to waste time pulling up his Twitter because, like, it says right here, there's 1,037 retweets at the time that this screenshot was taken, 694 quote retweets, and 6,000 likes. I guarantee you those quote retweets, they probably aren't good. I don't really dabble in a lot of like comic book Twitter. I don't, because the fandoms just, you can't, and I don't want to deal with any fandoms, and that's something that I'm gonna go over after we go over all this. So in an interview with IGN, Taylor elaborated the question for John and our creative team is, what should a new Superman fight for today? Can a 17-year-old Superman battle giant robots while ignoring the climate crisis? Of course not. He then detailed that he's not just a climate activist, but he's also an activist for illegal immigrants as well. Can someone with super sight and super hearing ignore injustice beyond his border? Can he ignore the plight of asylum seekers? It's like, that's why I'm just like, I don't know. Like, and let's see, with all these woke changes happening back to back, DC Comics put out a press release claiming that they had unprecedented orders for Superman Son of Kal-El #5. The company wrote, following the news of the upcoming reveal of John Kent coming out as bisexual in issue 5 of Superman Son of Kal-El, global fans' excitement has led to more orders of the upcoming issue than the series' debut issue. Previous estimates of the book sales showed it was in the gutter, with Comic-Con claiming the first book of Son of Kal-El sold 68,800 issues back in July when it first debuted. That was good for the 17th best-selling. The recent data compiled by Comic-Con reveals the book's third issue only sold 34,000 in September, and that made it 77th. So not even in the top 50. So like, dude, like, I like that suit design. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna hate like that. Not so much, but like, I think it's just this art style. Like, I like that. That's a good cover. That is a good Superman cover. Like, and when you see that cover on the stand, you're gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna grab that comic. I want to read it. But then you get inside the comic and you're just like, no, thank you. Not my thing. Let's see, that 68,000 number for the first issue is even worse when compared to its previous Superman #1 issue when the series was rebooted. When Brian Michael Bendis took over back in 2018, Superman #1 sold 133,700 copies. In June 2016, when DC relaunched their entire line with DC Rebirth, Superman Rebirth #1 sold 118,000 copies, and Superman #1 sold 105,000. when DC rebooted their entire universe in New 52s, and in September 2011, it sold 1,800,000. Now, I already talked about this before with Rebirth. This is what kind of got me out of a lot of DC stuff, is because we had Blackest Night, Brightest Day, New 52s. Then, 5 years later, we got Rebirth, and I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm tired of this, like, rebooting constantly. So yeah, nah. Yeah, so it's like there's no, like, even then, like, the annual brought back, like Lex Luthor, and I was like, oh, that's okay. And it was 45th out of the top 50. Even trying to bring back, all these other ones. So my thing with the whole Superman situation, and this is, I'm not into comics for the like, okay, there's always been like some, realistic, what's going on, current political landscape or world landscape in comics. There always has been. But there's also a balance of a lot of fiction. I mean, when you're Superman, what do you want? You want some General Zod. You want Doomsday. You want all the, that's what you want. You want some Justice League. You want Brainiac. I don't want Superman protesting with a sign. Like, climate change. Okay, climate change. He's got all these powers. You're telling me creatively he can't be like, well, this is how I would stop this. Like, I have all these powers. It's like, I get the symbolism behind it. It's like, if if superheroes were, if the DC universe was real, and you saw Superman walking on the street protesting, you'd be like, oh shit, Superman's protesting. Like, okay. He could do something about it, but he's choosing not to. That's quite the statement. The statement is he's lazy. I don't know. I don't think that's just. I don't get it. Honestly, it's just, and like I said, it's not gonna do anything. But yeah, this whole Son of Kal-El issue and everything going on. Like I said, I'm not gonna start a campaign to be like, hey, let's bring back Superman, this and that. It's like, no, if Tom Taylor wants to, like, write the story that you want to write, but the people who want to read it are gonna read it. And now I get the unprecedented sales for that issue, but a lot of people are buying them up and not reading it because they're gonna think, oh, this is gonna be valuable one day. My internet's acting up again. It's gonna be valuable one day, or they're gonna get it signed and graded, and then they're gonna throw it up on eBay for like $150. Like, well, I spent $25 on a signature. If you 20, like, people are just gonna try and flip it. I used to do stuff like that, so I know exactly, what that happens. It's not it happens all the time. So yeah, it's Superman. It's just, Action Comics is really good though. Superman being off world right now, I'm curious when this, because this Son of Kal is not a permanent run. Okay, it's gonna have to end at some point because Superman's gonna come back to Earth, and then I swear, if they do this, like, if they do like some weird like Batman and Son style thing with Superman and Jonathan Kent, I don't even know how that, like, but Batman and Robin, especially Damian Wayne, that's actually been entertaining. Damian Wayne was a very entertaining Robin when he first came on the scene and everything else. I have not read anything recently. Like I said, I'm not pulling Batman. I'll wait for trades. Even then, I might not pull the trades. I think the last Batman related thing I got was the Three Jokers, and before that was some of the Batman and Robin issues back in the New 52s, and that's it. I haven't, Superman, I'm still getting like Detective Comics and Action Comics, but even then, like, it's just because I'm a completionist and I've been pulling them for so long that it's kind of like, well, I want a complete set of all these at some point, even though I'm not going to get the older ones, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get modern runs done. Even like Spider-Man, a lot of people still hate on Miles Morales. I was in that boat. I will be the first one to admit, the Ultimate Universe for Marvel, when they were killing off Peter Parker and Miles Morales was popping up, I was like, ooh, I was like, okay. So my first initial reaction was, okay, we're getting a person of color Spider-Man. What are we going to tell for a story? Like, that's my instant thing, is like, what are we going to tell for a story? Because if you call a spade tokenization, if you're going to do this and we're not going to get, you know, a fleshed out character with a good story, and you're just doing this to pander or hit a new demographic and get your sales, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and it's stupid. Kind of like right now, DC's doing a Batman run. I don't know if it started yet, where we're getting a Batman in New York, and they're obviously making him black. And this is someone, by the way, because a lot of people always ask me this, and I'm tired of explaining this. I get it. My complexion. I am mixed race. My dad is white. My mom is black and Native American. So, as someone who growing up, I had the multitude of white comic book characters to be like, ooh, cool. And from a black standpoint, I mean, Blade was a thing, Black Panther was a thing, but those weren't like top tier. Those weren't like in your face. But it wasn't really until like Static Shock. That was such a good freaking show. I love the Static Shock so much. And then seeing what they're doing now with the changing of the origin of him, even, and I'm like, really? Like, this is what we're doing? Like, so when I bring up race swapping and tokenization, you can say that whole, well, you're a cis white male, as a counter argument, because that's not even the fucking truth. That's not even remotely close. So if you want to come at me with that type of rebuttal, you can just shut up, because that's not even remotely close. And it's really something that's annoying, because Black History Month, a lot of companies are just like, oh, let's start showcasing people of color. And it's like, okay, yeah, because it's February. I knew it was going to happen. I was talking to my friends in January. I was like, one more week and it's going to be White Guilt Month. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's when all these companies are going to come through and be like, let's showcase our person of color content creators or writers or artists or this and that. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, it happens every year. And then right on March 1st, back to business as usual. And I was just like, no, because 2 years ago, and I just had a podcast, wasn't doing YouTube. Mixer was shutting down around that time frame. Or no, Mixer was it was 2 years ago. Mixer was a thing, but I wasn't really caring about it. And then I was mainly just focusing on my podcast, and I was just like, oh, a lot of people are like, hey, if you're a person of color and this and that, we want to showcase podcasters, this and that. And I contacted these people, and they're not even around anymore. I don't remember their name. It's been, it's been 2 years. I'm sure I have it somewhere in one of my emails, the reply, but I don't want to dig through, because I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of stuff in the emails. Don't want to, have to audit my email and go back and find it. But they were like, well, we don't doubt that your heritage in race, there's black, but we're looking for, and I don't forget how they worded it. They said they were looking for, in roundabout way, full person of color, like the melanin of the skin. They wanted someone who looked black and talked black. And I was like, oh, okay. Mind you, I wasn't really big on social media at the time. I was worrying about my career and, the fact that I was about to lose my job because everything was shutting down. So I was like, oh, that I had bigger concerns like paying bills than to go after this company and, put them on blast. So it's like, I didn't care about social media at the time. I was more concerned with actual things happening in real life, not on the internet, because it's the fucking internet. Oh, well. And if I wasn't gonna have tough skin after, at the time being 33, I have tough skin when it comes to racism and this and that, because I've dealt with it for so long from all sides of the fence, and I'm just like, no. So I was like, all right, cool. I was like, well, I'm not gonna support your company. Good job. Hopefully you're successful. But that podcast network group has been shut down. They did not make it far. And I should have known, because they had a decent Twitter following, but all their shit was going through a Facebook group. And I was like, Facebook group? Really? In 2020 you're really just pumping, like your main concern is a Facebook group. I was like, no thanks, not happening. But yeah, so there's like the Miles Morales thing. So it's like I didn't give Miles Morales a chance. I didn't freaking care. And then I watched Into the Spider-Verse. Artistic stylization, this and that, great film. Still didn't get really a depth for Miles Morales. And then randomly, I saw Miles Morales Spider-Man, not just regular Spider-Man, just Miles Morales Spider-Man run. And I was like, let me check this out. The cover drew me in. And like I said before, like I showed with that Superman Son of Kal-El, a good cover can draw you in to pulling a comic. And the cover got me. And I was reading, I was like, okay. And it had it was a team up, so there was like Rhino was in it and Captain America, and they were trying to stop like human trafficking in New York. And I was like, it was actually a decent comic. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull more of these Miles Morales. I'm curious because this is actually not that bad of writing, and the art style is pretty good. And so I'm still pulling Miles Morales. It's not a bad comic. I think that if he wasn't Spider-Man and he had any other name, no one would have an issue with it. And I wouldn't have that much of it because, like, you don't need, like, he could have been named anything. I mean, we have Spider-Man 2099, we have Scarlet Spider, we have Silk, this and that. Like, the fact that they passed the mantle to Miles Morales is what a lot of people had an issue with. And I will say, like I said, for a while there, I did not care about Miles Morales, did not care at all. And now I'm just like, you know what? It's not a bad character. Could be a lot better. But like I said, the Spider-Man name is what is going to hurt Miles Morales because he got that mantle, which is why the whole issue with Captain America right now, you got, they're bringing Falcon back as Captain America. And I will say there was one iteration where I didn't hate it for a couple issues, and it was Captain America now aged and Falcon took over, and all that time you had Captain America as kind of like his handler. He had a little earpiece on, was coaching Sam through everything, kind of teaching him, showing him the ropes of being Captain America. Also, Deadpool was in there with Captain Steve, which was really funny because, you throw Deadpool in there, it's going to be entertaining, even though Deadpool now has just become a caricature of what he was because they're really playing up to how the movies were, which was a little more outlandish than what Deadpool actually was. They kind of cut back. There was no voices in his head. He wasn't as creepy in the regards of multiple personality, like just all the voice. Like there was a lot more to Deadpool than just meta fourth wall dick jokes, And it seems like Moon Knight, which I'm a fan of, the Moon Knight series from the trailer we saw seems more closer to how Moon Knight is without the multiple personalities side, like Deadpool. Because that's how Deadpool was talking to himself and voices. Like when you watch like Deadpool Kills the Marvel, read Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, you go back and you read anything Deadpool before the movie. Like one of my favorite things still is Hit Monkey when Deadpool was trying to go to Spider-Man to get Spider-Man to help him, and he's like, "There's a monkey in a suit with guns chasing me, trying to shoot me." And Peter Parker the whole time's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. You're stupid. Like, get away from me. What's your problem?" And then Hit Monkey shows up. He's like, and Peter Parker's just like, "You're telling the truth." And it was hilarious. And then this whole Hit Monkey situation ensued. And stuff like that is really entertaining. That's what I want to be entertained with comic books. I don't want to be preached to, which is why I love manga. A new manga series I just talked about on my podcast that I'm reading right now is Kaiju number 8. This is really good. I love kaijus like Godzilla. I like Ultraman, stuff like that. Obviously, a lot of my stuff on display is Gundam and Ultraman and some horror stuff and a lot of tokusatsu from Japan, because from a content standpoint, Japan is pumping out great stories and good characters, good world building, and they're not preaching anything. They're doing it fictional, a fantasy to entertain you, and that's it. And that's what it should be. I want to be entertained by TV shows and movies, unless I'm watching like a documentary or something, or like a historical film. But if it's science fiction, regular fiction, horror, this and that, I just want to be entertained and have a good time. A little escapism is never wrong. I don't want to be preached at or anything like that. And that seems to be the main thing. And that's going to lead right into me talking about manga, because the year of, because it's now February, so we finally are getting more statistics from last year. This was posted on the 4th by comicsbeat.com. Graphic novel sales were up 65% last year. And of the category sales, which is, um, you know, graphic novels, comics, all this stuff under one umbrella, they made up 76% of the category sales. So, graphic novel sales in 2021 resulted in a great year for comics, according to figures released by NPD Bookscan to The Beat, following and building on a great year in 2020. Overall, graphic novel sales in 2021 were up 65% from the previous year, not as much as the pandemic fueled 100% growth from 2019 to 2020, but still impressive. 21 million more graphic novels were sold in 2021 than 2020. Now, mind you, manga is now a part of graphic novels. They do not get their own category, and my theory is they don't have their own category because they would dominate. The numbers would be so much smaller because graphic novels, obviously, you're going to get your trades in there for comic runs and this and that. So if they were in their own category, manga, not under graphic novels, that'd be ridiculous. So the growth was led by adult graphic novels, up 107%, but it's important to note that this category includes manga, which led the charge, up 17 million units. This was a direct result of the boom in anime on dueling streaming services, when pandemic era stay-at-home viewers seeking out the original manga. I'm gonna kind of like, listen, these are number of facts. Numbers don't lie. These are factual things. I think it's not just the anime boom that boosted manga sales. It's accessibility to get manga. You can go on Amazon. Barnes and Noble has a very extensive manga section. Target and Walmart now carry manga. And mind you, if you don't want to pay $12 or $13 for manga, you can get it for $8 at Target. So for the price of, 2 manga volumes at like Barnes and Noble, you can get 3 at Target. And they do count towards their book sales when it's buy 2 get 1 free for books, or buy 1 get 1 half off. The manga does count towards it because it's a book. In terms of percentage change, kids fiction comics, which have been leading comic growth for years, was up 24%, while young adult fiction was up 96%. Nonfiction saw much smaller gains and even a loss in the case of children's nonfiction, although young adult nonfiction was up 30%. The nebulous category of other was also down 39%. So let's see. So there you go. NPD Bookscan also provided a genre breakdown for adult fiction comics, and this is where it gets very interesting. Manga is definitely the 800-pound gorilla here. In rough numbers, manga was up 171% from 2020. Adult superhero comics were up a modest 2.3%, but that category was the second biggest genre in actual sales after manga, shifting more than 2 million units. These numbers reflect graphic novel sales only and not periodical comics, and are based on the BISEC categories. So here's the thing. So graphic novels, obviously, for those of you, I don't want to be a dick and explain it to you like you're an idiot, because you guys aren't idiots. So with comics, most graphic novels and trades, like when I say I'm trade waiting, it means I'm going to get volume 1 of a trade, which will be like maybe the first 5 or 6 issues of a comic, sometimes 4, depending on how short the run is in the arc. So what happens is, when you're looking at these sales, they're not counting they're not basically keeping track of like the monthly comics. Like every month a Spider-Man comes out, every month a Venom or a Superman. They're not these sales are not. This is strictly graphic novels, and that's ridiculous. That's so much. And they even have like the number, like seeing numbers is one thing, but the fact that we get these charts right here where you could really see like comics and graphic novels, manga, like that's from 2020 to 2021. It's like, yeah. And then, comics and graphic novels, superheroes really hasn't changed, and all other genres. But the units sold is just, and also, like I said before, My Hero Academia is no longer in the superhero category. Basically because even though it's superhero, it's a manga. You can't, fluff the superhero numbers by putting My Hero over there if it's a manga, and have all the other mangas under just graphic novels. Like, you have to keep them all in one if that's how you want it. That's why I still think we should get the numbers on their own. Manga should not be a part of graphic novels at all. Like, it should be its own category, but it won't be that way because it'll drastically show just how bad the comic industry is right now compared to the manga industry. And let's see, horror comics were up 35%, crime mystery was up 78%, and the LGBTQ plus comics were up 40%. Fantasy comics were up 43, media tie-ins were up 36. I mean, there's so much, like, media tie-ins, like, there's so much stuff. That's like, say, like, for me, I like Life is Strange as a comic book in a video game. That counts as a tie-in. Same with the Stranger Things comics. That's a media tie-in. Let's see, categories that were down in 2021 include contemporary women down 14%, anthologies were down 3%, and general category was down 3%. But other than that, every other genre showed significant growth. Let's see, adult fiction, comic, graphic novels account for both the largest overall volume and highest percentage growth of the year, driven by manga, which was up 15 million units, even though they just said 17 over 2020 on a total of 24.4 million units. Top series are tightly correlated to the top anime series streaming on video on demand platforms such as Hulu, Netflix, and Crunchyroll. Juvenile fiction, don't care. So the young adult one, the Five Nights at Freddy's series, which I've talked about, is actually really entertaining. I finally just found the Silver Eyes. There are some young adult stuff that is entertaining, especially because I like the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's. I went over it on the podcast. I'm not going to go over it too in depth here, but I there's so many books now. Like, you go to Target or like any store, there's like 18 different ones because they do like little one shots. Let's see, I'm trying to see if, like, so there's not really too much of a breakdown of the manga side of things. So yeah, like, the numbers don't lie. Like I said, and I'm not beating a dead horse here. I think that we really need to take a look at the fact that manga is carrying the graphic novel and category in sales, and that it needs to be on its own, because we're not going to see the depth of how the decline in the comic industry, both from periodic monthly and bi-weekly or bi-monthly issues compared to trades and graphic novels. We're not going to see the real numbers of, and no one's going to see the real, like, issue at hand and address it if we're going to basically save the graphic novel category by putting manga in there. Now, you could sit there and take all the numbers from those stats and come to your own conclusion, and from a number standpoint of where graphic novels non-manga are at for numbers, but I'm not going to do that. And my foot fell asleep. I was sitting on my leg the whole time for the last hour. Damn. So, to close out the show, a lot of people have been pointing out a change in my content direction, and I tell them it's not. Like, everything I talk about now lately, especially comic book stuff, manga, anime, video games, has been something I have in conversations on Discord and in DMs. For the longest time, I played it very safe on social media and with my content, because I thought if I kept this Switzerland style neutrality, that I could appeal to everyone's nature and everyone's opinion. And then when I started to realize doing that, I'm just kind of picking and choosing my opinions to give you, and sugarcoating a lot of things. Like, for the last year of me talking about Marvel and DC comics, just being like, yeah, well, you know, this story doesn't really appeal to me, and I'm trying to save money. Like, yeah, I'm trying to save money, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not, like, worried. I could go buy some comics, you know? I could go drop $4 on a comic. The $4 is not the issue at hand for why I'm not pulling certain comics. The issue at hand is the writing, and that's the problem, you know. And with you know, a lot of my friends are seeing, like, me tweeting more, like, liking more different tweets that show up on their feed, and being like, so you're, like, now to the point where, you know, I spend my free time watching content creators a lot, like Gothics. You know, I've known Gothics for over a decade. Really good friend of mine. We don't talk constantly, but doesn't mean it's not a good friend of mine. I will support everything she does. She is, a content creator that has a perspective on everything going on that I share a lot of similar opinions with, but also it's all about how you conduct yourself and how you present your content on social media. And, I have friends who are also just like, you know, we'll be playing games. I'm like, all right, yeah, like, I'm going to jump out of voice chat. I'm going to go, put the Switch in handheld mode and I'm going to go watch Friday Night Tights from Nerdrotic. And then they're like, why? They're all this, and like, I'm like, and they bring out the phobic words and the ist words. And I'm just like, really? Like, I don't see it. Like, I mean, they're equal opportunists when making fun of people, you know? Same with Eric July, Young Rippa. Like, talking earlier in the stream about, indie comics, I'm really excited for the Rippaverse, like, because I'm always going to support a new independent comic book publishing company. I'm all for new stories and new characters being created because for, turning 36, like I said before, and I've been seeing this recycle and read and changing of the same characters over and over again. And it's like, give me something new. Give me a new original character. I don't want a new version of Captain America. I don't want a new version of Spider-Man. I don't want a new version of Superman. Give me a new character with it. I want a new origin. I want a new universe. I want new villains. I'm tired of them going back to the well. And I get it. There's a lot of people who are just getting into comics that are reading current stuff that never read older stuff. So this is their first time, introducing themselves to these characters, especially after the MCU stuff. A lot of people are just now getting into a lot of the Marvel characters that showed up in movies that they never even thought about, reading before, or they never even read any comics before. I have a lot of friends who got into comics in the last couple of years who would ask me, hey, where do I start? I want to, like, what are some good characters? I like these types of characters. Where can I begin? And I'm like, all right, let's sit down. Let's talk. Let's figure out where we can get you started. And most of the time I'm like, yo, go get some old Daredevil. Get some Frank Miller. Get